So here's a quick demo of how UiPath Robotic Process Automation, or RPA, can be used in the PMO space to automate routine tasks that PMO analysts get asked to do. And one of the common ones that we see regularly is the example of taking project management reports. You can see 3 here in a folder that have been sent in. They're fairly standard, where there's a headline status of green, there's a highlight, and then there's some more detail below of what's happening this week, next week, so on and so forth. It's quite common for PMO analysts to be asked to take this data and produce a project portfolio report, normally in PowerPoint, which gets sent to the exec team. And that's something that typically happens on a Friday afternoon. So you can imagine the scenario. Project managers have to get their reports in by lunchtime. They're busy, things end up being late, and the PMO gets stretched in the afternoon, rushing to get reports out on time to meet a deadline. Now, that's a lot of time that the PMO analysts are spending every week on a repetitive task, cutting and pasting information to make it available for the exec team. And these are people with analyst in their job title. They really should be doing analysis on the reports, which they often don't have time to do. All they end up doing is cutting and pasting data, slamming it through to the exec team, and letting them do the analysis themselves. So what we've got here with UiPath, this is the UiPath Studio where processes are created. And what we've set up here is a very simple workflow where what we want the automation tool to do is to read the emails on the folder, to extract key data from them, to generate a report in PowerPoint, and then to see that email that report out. Now, if you've not seen the UiPath Studio before, it's quite simple. If you've used Visio or any kind of process flow tools before, you should be able to pick it up quite quickly. What we do, we have an activities pane over here where we can look for activities that we want to do. So if, for example, we want to read emails in Outlook, we can search for a activity to do that. We've got one here called Get Outlook Email Messages, which is what we want to do. So let's have a look inside read messages here, and you can see there's just 2 things happening here. There's getting the messages from Outlook, and there's a simple delay before it goes on to the next step. If we click on this one here, we can see a little bit more detail. It's telling it which folder to go into in my mailbox. It's telling it to mark any emails that it reads as read, and for now I've just set it to only bother reading the top 5 emails. If there's more, you can change that to anything you want. For me, I'm just saying just read the top 5 that are in there. If we go down further, what we'd like it to do is extract the data. Now, things are getting a little bit more complicated now, but again, it's fairly straightforward to follow the steps. Here's the data that we want to put into our report. We want the name of the project. We want to get the RAG status, whether it's red, amber, or green. We want to pull out the key highlights from the report. And something I'm going to show you a little bit later on is doing some sentiment analysis on those. So for each of our projects, we want to capture that data. So we're going to loop through each of the email reports that we've got. First step we're going to do is grab the project name. Now I've used a little bit of string manipulation here. What we're doing is taking the name of the details from the subject field of the email here. You can see here this is a project called RPA Platform Readiness, and you can see a pattern that's common across all of these. They all follow the same format, which a lot of your project reports will do. So RPA Platform Readiness, project report, and then the date afterwards. Because they're all following that same format, we can use a string split instruction. So we're basically going to take that line of text, we're going to split it at the word project, and we'll end up with an array with 2 sections, one before and one after the word project. After that, all we're basically going to say is from that array, take the very first part of that, so the words before project, and that becomes our project name. We're saving that as project name, and we'll put it back into that table that we created at the top shortly. We're basically following the same process to extract various things from the body. So what we're going to extract here is the RAG status, which will be from this line. Again, this line is in a consistent format, so we know it's the word after RAG status is. So you can see how we can do a simple split there and pull back the word green in this scenario. And then we're going to do the same for pulling together the highlights. So we know highlights come in the email after the statement of highlights in this report are, and there will either be 1 or 2 bullet points. I've noticed a spelling mistake in that one. Should pick that up with the project manager afterwards, but that's not for now. So you can see here we're going to go through. This is extracting from the body. It's looping through each of the lines. It's finding the line that has the RAG status in it, and it's pulling the RAG status through. And after that, it's pulling the highlights. Again, looking for the highlights in this report section, moving down beyond that, and then pulling the information below it. Now, at the end of this section here, we are doing something a little bit different. We are doing this section here called web analysis. Now, what we're doing here, I mentioned sentiment analysis to you earlier. This is where you can start having fun with RPA, and you can start looking at things like, let's just open up a new tab here. You can start looking at things like artificial intelligence. Let's try the right address for that one, shall we? Sentiment analysis is one thing that's common with most AI engines nowadays. So you can use this with whether you're using AWS, whether you're using Azure. They all have a method of doing sentiment analysis. And what sentiment analysis is, it basically looks at a block of text and will assess its overall sentiment score, deciding whether it is overly negative in tone or whether it is positive or enthusiastic. Now this one here, as you can see, goes from a -100 to a +100. That's just a website. You can cut and paste data in here and it will give it a sentiment score. So maybe that could be something that's interesting with our projects. It's not just about the information that's in the report, but we could also start gauging, is the report overly positive or overly negative? Maybe that could be something that our analysts could use to start assessing which project reports they want to look at, in addition to looking at RAG statuses, milestones, and other key indicators that they would normally use. So we're going to go to that website for each one of these reports, paste in the data from the project, and we're going to get back the information about whether it is overly positive or negative. If you look down here, you can see the steps that it's taking. It's clearing the text in there, it's adding the pasting the text in, it's clicking the analyze text button, waiting for a response, and then it's pulling back the score afterwards. So once we've got all of this information from our report, the project name, the highlight, the RAG status, and the sentiment score, we're going to add a row into the table that we created at the top, and then we loop round and go through this process again. And we'll continue doing that for each of the reports that we have in our folder. After that, we're going to generate the report. So we're deleting any. First step we're going to do is delete any old reports that may be sitting in our folder. So we're leaving everything nice and tidy. And what we're going to do is take the table that we created and push that out to Excel. So we're putting that into Excel. You can see here we're writing that range into Excel. We're doing some basic copying and pasting. This is hitting Control A, which if you use Microsoft apps a lot on a Windows machine, you'll know means select all. Control C is copying the data. So we're literally getting the RPA bot to do our cutting and pasting for us instead of asking our analyst to do it. Now after that, we're firing up PowerPoint and we're opening a template that we've created, and we're going into that and we're going to paste information into various places. Not content with just pasting the information in, we're going to add a title to it. So we're adding a title here, project roll up. We're going to switch slides. This is where we're doing our page up here. Adding a heading to the front page. We're going to add today's date in, and we're telling it what format we'd like that date in. And then we're going to save the file, and we're giving it a file name format that we want to follow just there. Saving our file and then closing PowerPoint down to leave it nice and tidy. Our last step is sending the report out, and again we're using one of the Outlook functions here, send Outlook message. We're sending it to an email address that we put in earlier. It's the weekly project roll-up, and there's a little bit of text in the body that says here is this week's project roll-up report, and the email gets attached. That's the plan. Let's see how this works. So let's just make sure we've got our reports ready there. So you've got 3 reports there. You can see they're all unread. Let's hit play and see if this is successful. So what we can see here, it's just changed the emails from unread to read because it's read all three of them, and it's cycling through the process. So it's pulled the key information out of the report. You can see now that it's going through the sentiment analysis tool and it's pulling back the score. So it's done two of those. It's now on to the third. After that, it's going to paste the table into Excel. Control A, Control C, and then it's going to add it into PowerPoint. Add a heading, go back to our top page, give the report an overall heading and put today's date on it. Then we're going to save it in the format that we want. There we go. And lastly, it's going to email it back to ourselves and it's all finished. So let's just take a look in our mailbox. Depending on how fast my email is and how well things behave, we should see the report here any second. There we go. If we look at our report, we can see the email was sent from the bot. Here's this week's report. Have a great weekend. And if we open it up, we can see that we've got our headings on there. We've pulled out the highlights from each of our projects here. And then we've got the sentiment analysis score from each of these. This one being very, very positive. This one here far less so. If we had more time and if we were playing around with this more, then we might choose to adjust the formatting of the emails, fine-tune things, remove the bullet points that you saw there. We might choose to do further analysis on the project, maybe extract information from risk reports and put risk scores in. We might even decide to start adding trend data. So what's the RAG status been over time and all those kind of things. All of this is possible with automation, but today I just wanted to give you a very small flavor, just a taste of what is possible with robotic process automation in the PMO space. Thank you.